exciting.
And now we get the red light.
Oh, baby.
So,
Holy smokes.
are we on here?
Can you see the video? What do we look like, Murph? Let's get a visual.
Preview not supported.
Okay.
You already saw it.
True.
It's good. It's a wide view.
Nice.
Let me pull up the notes.
You have coffee in that?
I got coffee, dude.
Got beer in here.
Beer and coffee.
Wait, so you legit have coffee? Oh, I thought you had coffee in your...
Dude, coffee.
Oh, you do? You have
Coffee,
double?
Water, beer.
Wait,
Okay.
so coffee.
Coffee, water. I put
Water.
in the
Okay, I
coffee cup.
thought you had extra.
Water in the coffee cup.
Okay, not
Okay.
extra.
Guys, I want to emphasize this. You got to make sure the mic is close to the mouth, Dill.
Okay. That's something
No?
you're going to have to worry about, Dill.
Constant.
Yeah, constant.
It's
give
got
you
to
a
be
reminder.
close, is what you're saying.
What Murph is saying is that the mic is going to
Yeah.
be close to the mouth.
Cool.
Where are you going?
Dude, I need to get some. I need some nicotine for this.
Dude, we're recording. Edit that out. Can you edit that out?
I can stop the recording.
Leave it in. It's part of the.
No, just leave it. He'll be back soon. It's classy, Dill. And your world, dude.
This is my world.
All right. What I want to do right
Your
now
world too.
is introduce you guys.
Sure. Thanks.
So, I have two really good friends here.
Check. Can you hear me? Check.
You're here, Dill.
Good.
Kirby Neuner and Dylan Griswold, two my classmates, also teammates at Williams College. We're here. It's Alumni Weekend 2017. It's been the third Alumni Weekend for some of us. It'll be the second for me, but it's been a while since we graduated. I'm really happy to be here. This is the second time I've been at the chalet. We're in Vermont at Dylan's parents' chalet in Vermont. We're gonna head
Grandparents, Esther.
grandparents. We're headed up to Williams tomorrow morning, and
Big
we've already had some dope combos, and we're just gonna keep it rolling tonight. Guys, thanks for coming and especially joining the show.
Absolutely, yeah. And I know Dill's
Dill's
a
a
chance.
repeat.
That's right. Dill's the first, the highest grossing episode, and
Yeah,
I'm happy to be a part of this. Heard a lot about it. Everybody's, people are excited. Happy to be here as well. Just like to first of all thank the Inspire Wire. Thanks to Dylan Griswold for making the flight out from the West Coast.
Yeah.
Really glad to have him here.
Yeah.
Murph, thank you for coming up and putting all this together. Really appreciate all the effort that went into tonight, and just hope I can make some good contributions to the show. So thank you.
Dill?
Yeah, I'm just really grateful to have such great conversation with you just a couple months
We've already
before.
been cooking them up.
Cooking them up.
You know, we've had a good night so far. Happy to be back on the show. You run a great program here.
Just blessings, just so many blessings.
Just heard so many great things about it since the last time that I've been on here.
Sure.
And it's just it's been such a great time just over the last few hours. Just really digging into some really difficult areas of conversation that aren't usually talked about. In our culture, there are often some taboo topics that one feels like cannot be brought up.
Yeah, you know what I've noticed is when I've been working, it's just like I work 8 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
I go through a similar routine a lot, and I don't really have those deeper type of conversations, especially with coworkers and family. So that's why I love this podcast, and I love getting back with the boys, because that was a cornerstone.
That's right.
Just general random conversations. It got pretty wild, got pretty good.
Cornerstone of life at Williams, of the liberal arts education that Williams takes so seriously. It's important to keep living it after you graduate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Murphy, you're absolutely right. I agree. It's hard to engage people in the real world. A lot of people walking around, walking past each other, right? Looking past each other, but not at each other. Not trying to understand each other. People who agree, people who disagree. I happen to think that's something that's especially timely today. I expect that we'll agree and disagree on things throughout this conversation.
100%.
Pumped to get started. So why don't you kick us off?
Okay, so we got a couple of topics that we've been ruminating a little bit about.
Sure.
So we started the conversation off talking about, we were in Spring Street, what is it, Cafe?
Spring Street Market, SSM.
Yeah. And we were talking about how a lot of what we're doing, is derivative of a selfish. All our choices, whether it be to go and say whether you're choosing a job, whether you're choosing to marry somebody, having kids, all those things, is a derivative of, essentially, when you bring it down, a selfish choice. Now, that's debatable. What do you guys think?
Well, Murph, you raise a topic, question that's been debated, argued, questioned for the ages, ever since man was first able to speak, to communicate.
Forever to fly, to walk, to run.
The question has always been, what is the end of man? What is man's purpose? And oftentimes, maybe not often, but if at the root of it, one can definitely and might continue consistently argue that all of man's ends are driven towards his own. And personally, I find myself split on this topic, and I feel like I could argue this either way, that man's ends are both selfish and unselfish given the different circumstances and motives of man. But the longer that I think about this, I feel that at its root, all of man's choices are rooted in self. And before I get into that, I want to give
Sure.
Kirby just a chance to state his
Sure, I'll say a few
position.
words and we'll dig in. I think, Murph, really good question, and something that we struggle with all the time. I mean, you take a look at broader macro level developments, and you think, do people behave in their own self-interest only? Do corporations, do states behave only in their self-interest? And you step back from that and start to realize that maybe it's not individual interests that are most relevant, but maybe collective interests, and maybe by channeling self-interest maybe that's the way to best achieve kind of the common good. Something to think about. I think, like Dill, I come down on both sides of it. Examples of both out there today. I personally think that self-interest is not the most powerful thing. At the end of the day, I know Dill's got some theological basis for his thought. Mine is just more observational and kind of a personal thing. But I'm sure we'll dive into it a little bit more.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. I think one way to kind of break it down a little bit is to go through, say, a particular example.
Case studies.
Yeah.
Sure.
Could you pose a case and perhaps we could talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I guess one that is a really, I don't want to say maybe a controversial one, is just, and the one we've talked the most about is the decision to have a child.
It's a good one.
It's debated a lot, especially throughout history. It's always been, the child is thanking the parents for bringing them to this world, right?
Sure.
But then we have the situation where, they're ultimately, they are making a choice, and when parents talk about it, they acknowledge that it is a choice, but they also say it is a sacrifice. One thing I'd say to that is, every choice you make, there are opportunity costs. You're sacrificing the other opportunity. You're making that choice, but it's definitely something to think about. And it's such a hot topic, talking about the choice of children. So.
Absolutely.
Well, is this are we only looking at this from the perspective in which the couple has made the choice to have children, or in circumstances in which you hear the term accident, you're an accident, so which side of those are we considering?
I mean, it's Murph, correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like you're thinking about this as a conscious choice. Right?
Correct.
It's something that's planned, and things happen that aren't planned, and that's okay. But if this is a conscious choice, it probably makes sense to address it like that. Look, I think to bring something into the world is a contribution to the world.
Yeah.
And Murph, like you said, there are sacrifices that come along with it. I think somebody wants to bring life into the world in order to both give themselves something to nurture and also kind of prolong their own existence. I think there's something really fundamental and existential about it at the end of the day, and maybe that is a little bit self-serving, but to give in that way, I think is at the end of the day selfless and something to be celebrated and something we shouldn't take for granted by any means.
Yeah, it's a great way of thinking about that, Kurt.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, again, I'm split on this because I think, depending on what one's motives are, creating a legacy, back, 200 years ago, the more children that you had, the more productive your farm would be, the more productive your business would be. And it was then the child's or the children's obligation to care for their ailing and aging parents, to take over the family's estate. And oftentimes those children were left with more than they asked for, with more responsibilities than they asked for, but oftentimes with more money than they asked for.
Sure.
And as far as just, looking at this from a theological perspective, as I will on most of these issues, as that seems to be what my role is in these conversations.
That's right. You cover the theological, I'll cover the normal.
That's right.
We'll go from there.
I like to, on an ideal level, right? I like to think of, if this child is being brought into the world as a consequence of love between a father and a mother, then, love bears forth love. And, that a man and woman can unite and create is an image or representation of God the Father's love towards us, and represents God's creative power in order to create in the world. And I think that is something to be celebrated, both by the parents in bringing forth another life into this world, and ultimately is a means by which the child can then reflect that love back into the parents, just as we, the children of God, reflect that love back to the Father.
Wow. It's good stuff. I have to say, I'm still not clear on where you come down in this selfish dichotomy. And maybe,
what's the verdict?
And maybe your point is that it's sort of, and I think this is valid, is that it kind of supersedes that dichotomy. You know what I mean? I think the thing that we should continue to strive to learn and to keep in mind is that very rarely are things so black and white, right? Very rarely do things fall into these binaries that we would will them to fit into. We create these kind of simple structures and try to jam these very complex questions and issues into them. And look, we as a society do this on political issues, and we pick sides and we entrench. And we move further and further apart. We were just having a conversation about this in the context of social media, but it applies elsewhere as well. I think, yes, the questions like this are good because they animate conversations that lead one to understand that the place we start is really not the place we should end. We start with these dichotomies and we end with something messier, but that's really the way of the world. I'm not sure, Dill, what you
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that, because, when we think about these things from policy perspective, or we think about these things just from white sheet of paper, we create this very simple linear narrative.
Sure.
Where x equals y, or x plus y equals z, or a plus z equals 2, and you can write these things and think that they're perfectly reasonable, relevant in nature on paper, but things never / rarely ever play out as we'd like them to or expect them to.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I guess the jury's still out, but that's how it's gonna be.
Sure.
But,
Where do you stand on that?
I think every choice we make, you're striving for a certain goal, but I can't help but see it's hard to avoid seeing how each decision you make can be peeled away and brought back to the original purpose, which is serving your own needs.
Sure.
Now, take, for example, your choice of spouse. When you choose a spouse, you're examining, sometimes subconsciously, the attributes of that person, the demeanor, the personality, and how those attributes are going to serve your own needs. So in a sense, you're selecting a mate that is going to serve your needs. And whether or not, like, but you also, obviously, you're looking for a scenario in which you can serve their needs, but it's a transactional relationship, and I totally think that that's real.
Is the correct term transactional there? Like what is?
I mean, I guess not, but it's an exchange.
Absolutely, and it could be, and I think what we have attempted to do, and in a lot of ways, I agree, and in other ways I disagree, but I think in the best cases we are able and have been able to and will continue to be able to channel that self-interest in ways in which both sides of an exchange or a transaction benefit.
But transaction almost seems too far, too impersonal of a word.
Sure, and it may be a little bit cold and a little bit calculated, absolutely. But it may be exchange.
It's not romantic. It's not romantic.
It's not romantic, right? And it's not right. It doesn't have sort of the fuzzy nature to it that we might want it to have. But
I would say a better word might be reciprocal relationship.
Yeah,
sure.
And I've had these conversations with my girlfriend Morgan, and she often, like, when I say something, I'm very logical and rational about my decision and explain it in that way, and it comes off as very cold. And she's like, well, that's not romantic at all.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I mean, that's the way it is.
I mean,
and it's not. It doesn't have that romantic fairy tale that people like to think about, but it works.
Is there a place for romance in our?
Definitely.
100%. And in a relationship like Murph and Morgan's, which is a great one and one that we celebrated for 9 long years and wish them all the best and all their future endeavors. Dylan, nope.
Thank you, guys.
In a relationship like that, you two are in each other's own best interest, in their own self-interest, and so that is such a prime example of a situation, of a relationship, of an arrangement in which you are getting exactly what you want, and so is she. And there are other relationships we can extrapolate that out, right? And we can make observations like that, and they're everywhere, or at least in an ideal world, they're everywhere. And when those situations break down, that is where we find conflict, right? When the reciprocity falls away,
where there's an uneven distribution, and that happens a lot when some person's getting what they need, but the other person isn't.
Yeah, I mean, you hear that as referred as, the 7-year itch in relationships, where the romance begins to fall away, and you gotta have a moment of clarity where you really are able to look at the relationship for what it is and for what it's not.
It does make you wonder. I mean, Murph, you say, you kind of talk about each party getting equal parts out of an exchange, but I wonder if and this is maybe a broader question, if the reciprocity deal that you describe requires equal distribution to work.
That's a great question.
That's a good question. I don't know if there are obviously.
I'd say the answer is no. It does not require an equal distribution, but the relationship would suffer greatly as a result.
Sure.
For that person that doesn't get their needs, and that's why an understanding of what the relationship is, what needs are not being fulfilled, needs to be constantly brought up. A consistent form of communication is essential to any long-lasting relationship. When there is a need that is neglected and it is not addressed, that's where problems fester.
Absolutely.
And then they blow up.
In a situation, romantic or otherwise, I think, in any sort of relationship, I think it comes down to effective communication of needs and the ability to highlight when those needs aren't met and reorder those relationships or those arrangements to ensure that, if not met currently, those needs are met in the future.
So, Kirby, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Kirby is a master's student.
Congrats.
Very, very, very well aware of both the divides in our political space, both globally and domestically, as well as those areas that are currently working for more or less pretty well. And so my question is, in our era of increasing globalization, when you talk about effective communication and being able to bridge those gaps, how do you see our increasing globalization function within that realm of communication, whether it be becoming more effective, or do you feel like that globalization is leading to greater divides?
Sure. I think it's a good question. I think it's a timely one, and I think what often becomes problematic is that as we become more interconnected, as societies and nations and peoples have greater access to one another, they assume that connectedness to equal communication, and in fact it doesn't. And so as a result, what I think has happened is that as those channels of connection have proliferated, meaningful communication has in fact decreased. And so what we assume incorrectly is that as we have greater our ability to reach out and kind of expose ourselves or be exposed to other groups, be they other political parties or other ethnic or religious groups, we think that in doing so, in seeing these people, that it implies that communication and should mitigate these conflict dynamics. But in fact, what we've done is simply entrench further in our own positions. There's been a lot of talk lately about the effect of social media on polarization and on whether or not it can kind of tamp down these more hostile urges that we've seen out of our own political climate here in the States in the last calendar year or so. I do have hope that process of globalization and greater integration ultimately can lead to a more constructive and a peaceful way of existence. But I think it requires some more deliberate action than we have put into it. I think the tools are there, and we can certainly use those tools in better ways than we've used them. But like I said, it requires a more strategic and deliberate communication, and not just an assumption that flow of information automatically means greater understanding, greater communication.
That issue is so true, and a great reflection of it is at the micro level. Like you were discussing it on the macro level, but like when you think about it, there's so much disconnect with the use of social media in anybody's everyday life. Like you don't have that meaningful conversation like you would if it weren't for social media anymore. Like the fact that we're like talking here right now, having an actual meaningful conversation, we don't have that nowadays because we're all just connected like distantly.
Absolutely. And I think I describe the phenomena. I live in Washington D.C, District of Columbia, and often take the metro. And what I see more and more, especially in the morning, is that you walk down to the platform, and busy platform full of people ready to go to work, and everybody is looking down at their phones. And the first couple of times I observed this, I wrote it off and didn't really think a whole lot about it. But as you continue to see this over and over and over again, what you realize is that in people's hands, in their pockets, on their desks, et cetera, there are these nodes of infinite information. And so we think that again, to my last point, we think that by using these technologies we are more connected and more aware, but what we're doing is putting ourselves on islands, and we're actually minimizing just the human-to-human interaction on a day-to-day basis, and on an aggregate level that serves to further divide us. I mean, if every person you walk by you said hello to or made eye contact with, and if every person you walk by you force yourself to consider how that person's day was going, what kind of struggles that person might be going through at a given time, we would be a more empathetic people here in the United States.
Arguably more exhausted.
More exhausted people. But look, I mean, this is the burden that we bear as emotionally, as social and emotionally aware animals. This is the burden that we should choose to bear, and I think this is really a way toward a greater common understanding and again a more peaceful mode of existence.
I mean, but this comes back to Murph's question about parents and children and the choice comes between that. You know, is this a choice that we have indeed chosen to bear?
Yeah.
The decision to have children.
No. You say that as emotional beings and
Social animals.
yeah,
Yeah.
that this is a decision that
No,
we've chosen to bear.
it's nature. It's an instinct to need a community, have a sense of purpose within a group, and like he was saying, we're alienating each other. We're on our own islands, and our nature tends to bring us together into groups. Like we were nomadic tribes of like 50 to 80 people. We had a sense of community. It's we really don't have that right now.
Right.
Whether it's in the suburbs or the city, you're either pulling into your driveway and not talking to your neighbor, or you're going into your apartment where you're surrounded by people, but you're still alienated.
Right. And I think that tendency that you describe, the desire to be involved in a group and to be comfortable in a group, I think the technology piece, the social media piece, becomes so interesting because what you realize further is that it doesn't create these cross-group or cross-border or cross-boundary divides. It just facilitates a greater grouping, a greater subgrouping that would otherwise happen. You know, it's what we trend toward, situations that are comfortable, people who we agree with. And these medias and these technologies just give us greater access to more and more people we agree with. And as a result, Dill, you brought up this graph in The Economist that we just saw that shows that over the last decade and a half or so, I think it was, people who identify as mostly conservative or majority conservative, majority liberal have in fact moved further and further apart. Those camps have moved further away from one another, and I think a large part of that has to be that people, instead of being forced to interact with those who might disagree with them, increasingly have much easier access to those who will just prop up their positions. So we're less frequently challenged. We find fodder for the arguments we would otherwise make. And again, we move further and further away from one another.
The term we so have come to know as the echo chamber.
Yeah. No, I agree. You know what I was thinking about when we were talking just now about this was your comment about the megacity and the integration into a large group of people, and how that would benefit society as a whole. The fact of bringing together a lot of people. The issue is the segregation, the people being out of touch with different social backgrounds, different types of people. I'm seeing nowadays that like we just discussed, even if you're in a city, New York City, Boston, any of those, you're walking by, it's nothing. It's nothing to you. These people you're surrounded by, you have no like personal connection with them. So how is a megacity going to transform that to where you're more aware, you're more tapped into, the different things people are going through? Because I feel like regardless of where you are, even if it's a city, that city will segregate itself into, oh, this is the poorer neighborhood, this is the, it'll segregate itself and still create those divisions. I don't know.
Sure, and I think, and for the viewers, that conversation about the mega cities was sort of in the context of how we can better improve our Earth from an environmental aspect. No, I think it's actually really apt here in this case as well. I just think kind of structured integration and structured exchange again brings us closer together, and whether that is in exchange with the person you bump into on the street, or whether that is in some kind of broader urban structure that houses millions and millions of people. And I think there are a lot of those out there who would say that these enormous cities really are the way of the future. They are the most efficient use of space. They are, in fact, maybe a little counterintuitively, but the way we can best protect the Earth, assuming that we can keep down harmful emissions and keep down some of the negative byproducts of cities, but that these are the direction in which we are moving, not only because of the environmental benefits, but also because of the social benefits. And there's something to be said for putting a lot of people on top of each other and making them figure it out. And
Yeah.
obviously we wouldn't will any kind of engineered situation like that. But again, there are those who say that this is a move that's happening because it is in the best interest of society, not because somebody's going to force people into one big place and have it be some sort of experiment, but because this is the natural way of things. And ultimately, because of insufficient resources, insufficient space, we will have no choice but to structure life that way. And it's an interesting concept. It's one that I don't know nearly enough about. But Murph, I think it does have really interesting applications, in this context too. And obviously, and you may be able to speak more to the environmental benefits, but those are just kind of an added bonus.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to get started on that because that gets dark.
Sure.
Real quick.
Sure.
I'm more of a pessimist when it comes to that.
Mm.
Those who took the my senior STEM in environmental studies would know that I literally just chimed in every once in a while. Oh yeah, the apocalypse is
Sure.
happening and all that shit.
Murph's a big apocalyptic guy. We're trying to keep him a little bit lighter tonight. We'll see how we can do.
Yeah.
And I try to push back against that a little bit of hope.
A little bit of hope.
I mean, I'm all for positivity. When possible, like, I don't know, it just gets overwhelming, and like a lot of the topics in environmental studies was focusing on remediation, geoengineering, trying to create a technological fix for the environmental catastrophes that are happening. Like, but for me, it seemed like too little, too late, and kind of like, well, we're past the point of no return. I mean, we're at the point of no return, and we kind of just have way too many people.
It's like trying to clean up the deck chairs on the Titanic as it's sinking.
Exactly.
You've got a big gaping hole in the boat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But people are already looking for, trying to find a way, to keep the human race alive, trying to leave this planet.
It's true.
It's wild.
It's true. No, I think I mean, Dill, I think there is, there's always room for hope, and on tough issues like this, there's a room for and a need for leadership, and I think it'll be up to us as individuals. It'll be up to governments and continents and regional organizations and cities and states and mayors and governors, private citizens and public groups and the like, to take some sort of leadership on these issues, and we've seen it to an extent, and we still have a lot of work to go, obviously, but somebody will step up, and we've seen examples of that, but it'll be up to those who wield influence to wield it for the good, or else suffer the consequences for us all, and that applies to us all. Matter of fact, I think you're right. There are major cities in Africa, on the continental U.S., throughout the world, that'll be underwater in 20 to 30 years, at the rate that we're moving.
And I do want to say one thing is that I am not like shunning the humans for the issues that are all about climate change. I think that a lot of what climate change is just the natural course of the world.
I do too.
The climate's going to change. It has, it always has, it always will.
Sure.
Humans have adapted.
Humans
humans have survived an ice age. So
sure.
I mean,
I think this gets at two really important things and themes that we've touched on. One of which is the importance of accepting a burden and a responsibility where one exists, but also the resilience of humanity and the ability to adapt. You know what I mean? Yes, things may change by themselves, but I think, and we can disagree and we can talk further about it, but yes, I think the global population has made a significant contribution to that change. I think it is very difficult, increasingly difficult, to deny that part of these issues are man-made. On the other hand, I really do believe in the adaptability, again, the resilience of the human spirit on an individual and collective level. So I don't, well, on one hand, I see this as a serious issue. would try not to see it as, you know, an apocalyptic world
Right,
ender.
yep.
Because I'm, you know, on one hand not willing to deny responsibility, but on the other hand not willing to accept that we don't have the capacity to work our way out of a problem like this.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes us unique and uniquely valuable. And that's you know, those are the two kind of big
Yeah.
issues that I see wrapped up in that conversation.
Well, I mean, that was a good talk.
Good one.
We
Really
got,
good
speaking of capacities,
one.
how you guys liking this combo so far? I think it's
Good.
good.
Yeah.
I'm like
I'm
I'm like pretty faded, but
Still sleepy. We've had a long day. Listen.
Hey, you know what? Try these on. You wanna?
no,
Real quick, just try them. It might be better for you.
no. I'm just like ready for movie chill time.
Those
Alright.
are movie chill. We're gonna take just a short break from the serious conversation. I'll
No.
give a rundown on
I got a good one.
on the tradition that is the chalet, and then we'll move back into something serious. Murph will
Yeah.
have a good conversation. So we're here in Wilmington, Vermont. Population 2675. Here in this little corner of Vermont. Again, the three of us were lucky to attend Williams College for 4 years, Northwest Massachusetts, the Berkshire Valley. Dylan and I met freshman year, and it was during that year the two of us ventured up here to Dylan's family chalet for the first time. And tradition is that we come, we make a shepherd's pie, which we've already done and already consumed for the night. A delicious shepherd's pie with the help of Ashley Griswold. Shout out to Crash Ash. We come up here, we drink some beers, we catch up, and this week in particular has been a trying week for Dylan's in med school at Stanford, for those who don't know. Does a little bit of homework, prays a lot, and this week Dill flew out to the East Coast, flew out to Washington. Just yesterday, actually, we made the trip up to my house in New Jersey and finished the drive. And so you're catching Dill here on the business end of quite the week, and we think we have some fun activities ahead, but Dill's going to take a little bit of rest, and for now I think Murph and I will continue the conversation, and Dill will chime in as he can. But again, just to reset the scene, I know most will pause for station identification, and what I'm really just trying to do is set the context. So again, coming to you from the chalet, my first time on the Inspire Wire. Really pleased with how the conversations have gone so far, and can't see myself being disappointed with how they go from here.
Yeah.
And Murph, happy to talk about whatever you think we should cover next.
I think you'd be a great co-host, by the way.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Flattered.
But I guess one to go on the lighter side, which
Sure.
is probably a good thing. One conversation I thought was really, really great. You had a good take on it as well. Was the capacity. We were just talking about capacities. The capacity for a human to be 100% honest with themselves and also with others. Probably one of the hardest things.
It's difficult, and I think, and I hope I didn't cut you off. And,
No.
Feel free to cut me off, but yeah, I mean, I'm lucky enough to be sitting here tonight with two of my best friends in the world, and I commented to these guys earlier, and I've been blessed with some wonderful relationships in my life. You know, a great family, great friends, just a lot of love. And it dawned on me recently that that I wasn't sure if I'd ever been kind of fully honest with myself about different things that I felt over the course of a lifetime, spiritual, emotional, and otherwise, but also with others. I think if we really challenge ourselves, it's an interesting question to answer. Whether there is a person in your life with whom you have been completely, thoroughly, bluntly, for better or worse, honest, and it's it's kind of it's a question that forces you to step back a little bit, and it's a head scratcher, and I found myself wondering what the answer to that question was, and I don't know if I think the answer was no for me. Again, just to be completely honest, and so that's something I turned 25 in October. Dylan turns 25 coming up here. I was 25 in September. That's right, Murph, not too long ago. That's right.
Baby over here.
Happy belated, Murph sauce.
Thanks.
And so we're at what I think is a fairly crucial point. And I think how we behave toward others in our lives, and how we approach our relationships now and over the next couple of years, and of course in years past as well. But I think again, I think how we treat people sets a tone and says a lot about us, and how honest and transparent we can be kind of dictates the course of life.
Yeah.
And so I personally, and again, something I was telling these guys before, and something I'm happy to share on air here, I personally am trying to start something called radical transparency.
Yeah.
Where I'm, with people I'm close with and within reason, obviously, but where I just, I share more. I'm more upfront about my feelings and
Love the
my
idea.
thoughts on issues and on my emotions, and those closest to me will probably tell you that that I've been.
They gotta have thick skin.
Exactly. You gotta have thick skin, and for my part, I need to be willing to, get some of that out there a little more, and to start some conversations that I might have otherwise avoided.
And also, it requires a very disciplined and very tactful approach when you tell the truth.
Absolutely.
Because you don't want to just be the asshole who just comes in and says, "No, this is the truth. This is what I think."
Of course, and truth, should be balanced. I mean, it's rare. We talked about this before. Things are rarely black and white, and so what I have strived to do is to just present my opinions and my ideas in ways that are balanced and take into account what others might be thinking, while at the same time not being too hesitant or short about those positions. And so, Murph, I think you make a good point, but at the same time, I think there's just so much to be said for putting things on the table and having the hard conversations.
Yeah.
And that's
totally
something
agree.
that I would like to be better at, and something that I'm trying to improve at myself.
I think it's a great goal. I think that is so great for your mental health, your overall well-being. And I have another thing to. One thing, fun fact is that you guys, the guys on the baseball team, call me Sauce. It's crazy because my boys from home also call me Sauce.
Is that right?
Both organically created.
Really, independently of one another.
Yes.
I would like
Pretty wild.
I would like to take some
You hear that,
responsibility
Bill?
for that nickname.
I heard it.
Big Sauce.
Yes,
Yeah.
Big Sauce is all on Curb.
That's right. That's public attribution, ladies and gentlemen. That's as good as fact in this day and age. If we had in writing, it'd be better.
Two sauce. But guess
So.
yours came from Big Sauce, right? That was the original. And the
More
other
sauce.
one, I believe it was Jordy Pimentel, a guy from my high school.
Pimentel?
Yeah.
What is he up to these days?
Tim and
I don't think you know him.
can you
No?
pronounce that one more time?
It's Pimentel.
Pim-
Are you familiar with the cheese? Pimento. It's like
Pimento.
pimento with an EL at the end. Am I right?
This is
Pimentel.
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 Pimento.
It's Pimentel.
Pimen.
Anyways,
Pimentel.
he called
Anyway,
me.
we'll cover that later.
He called me the Murphy sausage,
With a Murph sausage.
and then it
It's a good one.
transformed
Good-
into
good type
the
of
Murphy
sausage.
sauce.
Mm.
Anyways,
Anyway,
back to what I was saying.
sure.
An issue with being honest.
'Cause it's hard.
There's one thing. You can be honest. Like, say from now on, I'm gonna be honest with people, right? Tell you my opinions. Be like tactful, obviously, but don't hold anything back. But one thing you have to. The other part of it is the demons.
Being honest with yourself.
No, being honest with yourself, but also having someone who knows all of your demons, everything about you. All right, dude.
And I think we're losing talent over here, folks.
No, but really, that is a difficult thing because say you decide to be transparently honest, right? Yeah, say you choose to be transparently honest. Starting now.
Yeah.
That doesn't absolve you from like all the,
Absolutely not. And I think this whole radical transparency thing comes from a lot of different places. It comes from having, go back to our domestic political climate, it comes from having observed elected officials and people who I would sort of looked up to and look to for leadership and who lead this country behave in ways that I don't admire and I don't think are transparent or honest. And so that's a part of it. And that's more of a superficial part, but it's a part worth mentioning. The other part does come from the personal side. It comes from, again, having had some great, relationships in my life, but ones that I wish that I had handled, differently or better or more honestly or more transparently. And that doesn't mean that I, did a lot of things that I regret, but I mean, from an emotional perspective, just wish that I had been more upfront about things that I was feeling in those relationships. And I think Murphy, you of all people, could speak to the fact that relationships are hard.
Yeah.
And it's just something that I value my relationships, be they romantic or personal, professional, or otherwise. And that's something that I've always put a lot of emphasis on.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that I can't be better about them.
Right.
And again, now, turning 25, starting to take relationships more seriously. It's a new chapter, and so I think it's, there's a lot of room for growth for me personally.
Yeah.
I like to think for all of us, but I can only speak for myself, and I know that that's on a personal level, that's the growth that I like to accomplish in the next 5 years. But Murph, again, you can speak to the difficulty of relationships.
Yeah.
So.
I think that is the ultimate goal, because it's just, I think about, just all the things the benefits of being able to be completely honest. I feel like that is a place where you just feel so secure. So, when it becomes relationships, and you get that reciprocity.
The reciprocity,
yeah,
exactly what we were talking about before.
That is, like, if that is mutual, that honesty, big time.
Big time, yeah. No, and I think it, I think it's different. I think it is really, or can be, liberating, right? To know that you are just kind of totally open with somebody about something.
Wow.
And I think, I think for me personally, Murph can attest to this. I spent my 4 years at Williams kind of running around with like a chicken with its head cut off, trying to do as many things as I could, and was lucky enough to be part of a great group of baseball players on a solid baseball team with a good coach and just a really supportive environment, and was able to do some cool things extracurricularly, and enjoyed my classes as a history major, public health and Africana studies concentrator. But I think in a way I've always, and since Williams too, being down in Washington, there have been some cool opportunities. But I think while I have kind of done a lot and have been lucky to again have cool opportunities and have some success in those opportunities, I think there's just a lot more to life than that. And that's something that I was reminded of recently by somebody very close to me, and that's something that I'm trying to really embody and really trying to live, and it's and it's difficult, especially to have put that off, frankly, for so long, and to kind of put off the emotional mode of operation. It's hard to accept it back, and but I think it's I think it is important, and frankly, look, it goes back to this point about empathy and connection that we talked about before, and if everybody could just turn that switch maybe just a little bit, and accept others maybe into their lives just a little bit more, I think it would go a long way. And I don't want to make generalizations because that's a dangerous game to play, but maybe I will make one here, and I think that could go a long way for me as an individual, but again for us collectively as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think what needs to be emphasized is the ability, like you were saying, to step back and reassess what your actions, your habits, what your persona is, what you've been doing, reassess, reevaluate, say, does this really matter? Right. And it's hard because when you get into a groove, you get into a mode, and the important issues kind of fall away, and you're getting into the minutia of small details that matter to you a lot. I remember, being in college, or high school or whatever it was, every little detail mattered to me on a daily basis. I was, stressing over small things. But I noticed when I have some time and I devote some time to personal reflection, whether it's forced on me because I don't have access to Wi-Fi, or I don't have all these things going on. I'm able to personally reflect. It helps immensely, and just refocus. All right, this is what really matters to me. I need to focus on this. I need to say, all right, this really matters to me. I can't be caught up doing things that aren't productive to my overall mental well-being, things like that.
Absolutely.
That was huge when I went on my road trip right after college. I literally had no service. I didn't have college. I didn't have sports. I had all this free time, and I had space to think.
Yeah.
It's so rare now.
It's true. It is true. And I think back, and Murph, you had a great trip, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about that at some point. But Dylan and I took a trip after we graduated. Dylan and I had been in
Iceland,
Haiti.
right?
That's right. Dylan and I had been in Haiti the summer before our senior year, just doing some minor volunteer work, really just learning about the place, and it was a great opportunity and a fun trip. And we were lucky enough to meet a girl, Emily. That summer, we went after graduation, spent some time with Emily and her family outside of London.
Oh yeah.
Just a great and loving and warm and faithful family, and we loved our time with them, and we hope to see them again soon. But while we were there, we took some trips, and Dylan is deeply religious, a really Catholic guy. So everywhere we went, Dylan would have to find a church.
Yeah.
And so of course for me, I'm kind of exasperated by this, and it's like, fucking Dylan. Got to go find a church, got to find a mass, right? Classic Dill. But I understood it, and as somebody who is personally not as religious, not raised in any organized faith, I understood that it was something that I maybe didn't understand. I recognized that I had my own limitations, and this was something that was important to Dill, and so I would ride my bike or walk the extra mile or take the bus across London or wherever the case was, so that Dill could find his church. And what I realized during those experiences is that I could sort of find my own little church or chapel or altar in space, right? With specifically with a pen and some paper and a cup of coffee, but really just with some space and with some time and
just dumping your thoughts.
Exactly. And again, for somebody who likes structure and stability and plans, the sensation of just kind of writing and seeing where the pen took me allowed me to make some really, really valuable connections, I think, about myself and about who I was as a person. And I hadn't really expected that. And so I've tried to keep it up. This past summer, I was going through some difficult things and tried to pick it back up again and saw that value, but unfortunately just have not done it consistently enough. But I would advocate that a lot for anybody, really. I just think it's so useful to write, or if you're a praying person, to pray. But whatever it is that you do that just involves some kind of free flow of expression, putting the pieces out there and then picking them up after the fact.
You'll be surprised at what comes out. Like, you have so many thoughts a day. You have your natural tendencies, what you really desire, what you really think, and when you just start writing, things come out, and then you look back on it again, and you're like, wow, this is who I am. It's hard to sugarcoat things when you're talking to yourself.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think, look, I think that ability to just kind of let that stuff out and to recognize it and to not try to suppress it, frankly, to maybe be a little more in touch with that side of things has bled over into my personal or my professional academic life, and I think made me more successful there. Just made me a more expressive and passionate person overall. So,
and that goes back to being transparently honest.
Absolutely.
When you allow yourself to be honest with yourself, great things happen. It's not just with other people. It's all right, this is how I feel, and write that down and let it sink in. Just like you would studying for a test when you write down your notes.
Exactly.
You got to write down your thoughts.
Exactly. Yeah, and just in the same way that a knowledge base kind of fills out as you study for a test, your person, your character kind of fills out as you understand the pieces of it that exist that you may not have been aware of or confronted otherwise. And as you start to piece those together, again, you kind of fill out as a person. And that process will continue, but I look at the point that we're at in life, and I like to think that we're starting to fill out as people and starting to move in the direction of things that matter to us, and move in directions more intentionally and with a little more thought. And And so I know that I would like to be, kind of the wholest and fullest person that I can be as I start to move in the directions, in the same way that I would want to know as much as I can or feel as prepared as possible walking in the door of a test. Know as much about a company as I could walk in the door of an interview. You want fullness and wholeness, whether it's a personal thing or again, whether it's in a classroom or a job setting. That's what we strive for. We probably know, right, that we're never going to achieve that all the way. And if there were ever to be a point where you could know everything about yourself or about a subject, what more would there be? We'd find ourselves bored as hell. There would be no more room for growth or for progress, and then we might as well just go up from there. So I like to think that you can continue to strive for things and know more things about your friends and the people around you as well as yourself, but also understand and accept and be fine with the fact that you're never going to know it all. And that is what I think a lot of these conversations come down to. So, yeah, absolutely.
That's a great way to end it, I think.
Appreciate that. Good.
Good. That was a great convo, and I appreciate you, Kurt, for coming on the show. This got pretty heavy, but it's positive, and one thing I want to emphasize is I appreciate you guys being honest and having a good convo. It's weird because it's so removed from this whole weekend. It's gonna be
that's right,
craziness.
That's
But
right.
but it's like we said, it's good to get some thoughts out there, have an honest conversation,
That's right.
and then we can get back into the festivities.
That's right.
Alumni.
That's right.
But one thing, I'm definitely gonna have Kirby on a solo episode in the future. It's coming down the road. I gotta get myself down to D.C. and visit Kirby and get that interview.
That's right. We'll keep tracking this radical transparency thing. I'll keep you guys posted on where it goes, and Murph's absolutely right. But look, I think that these conversations, this kind of conversation, can absolutely happen in the midst of a homecoming weekend.
Yeah.
This broader theme of kind of integration and holistic synthesis and all of that is just so consistent with the nature of this conversation. And tomorrow morning we're going to wake up, give it 2 claps and a Ric Flair, and start drinking beers. And we'll keep this conversation in mind, and we'll pick it up again. But we'll go out and we'll root for the Williams football team, and we'll put everything behind them, and we'll be excited and fired up to see people we haven't seen in a long time, and we'll have this in the back of their mind. And that'll make us better in those interactions, and it'll make those guys better on the field to have thought about things like this, and so it all applies, and it's all connected, even if we're not always thinking about it fully and talking about it as in depth as this has been. But Murph, this has been just great for me, really good for me, and a lot of fun, and yes, has been heavy, but has also been just full of joy,
good stuff,
full of excitement for me.
I'm just glad I got to see you guys, to be honest.
Man, you too. Yeah, it's been too long. Been too long. For those out there, never graduate, but if you do graduate, send a text every once in a while.
Yeah.
And by all means, find a chalet to go to. Highly recommend it.
Oh man. All right. That's gonna do it. Thanks, Dill, as well for coming on the show. He says thanks. And that's gonna do it. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks, Murph.
All right.
Good night.
All right, guys.
Wow. Dope. I think that went beautifully.
Poured it out, dude.
Yeah, you just crushed that.
How long is it?
Let's check. Let me check right here, actually.